Hello, sweet listeners. Thanks for tuning in to the NetSuite podcast. I'm your host, Kendall Fisher, and we are already more than halfway through 2022, which might be scary to some of you, but it means good news on the NetSuite front. 2022 Release 2 is here. Sneak peeks are officially live, so we're taking this episode to discuss all of the new updates that come with it. We'll be joined by several guests to help us break down everything you need to know, with new capabilities across inventory counting, mobile, wholesale distribution, and more. So stay tuned because that's coming up next.
You're listening to the NetSuite podcast, where we discuss what's happening within NetSuite, why we're doing it, and where we're heading in the future. We'll dive into the details about the software and the people at NetSuite who are behind all the moving parts. We'll also feature customer growth stories, discussing the ups and downs of running a company and how one integrated system can help your business continue to scale.
First up, Senior Director of Product Marketing, Lisa Schwarz, joins us to provide a general overview of what's new in 2022 Release 2, a little teaser, if you will, into what we will discuss throughout the remainder of the episode, as well as a refresher on how the update is delivered to all of you and how to prepare for it. Hi, Lisa. I can't believe it, but it is already that time again. We're back to another release episode.
Yeah. Hey, Kendall. It certainly is. Time has gone by really fast.
Yeah, it has this year, indeed. And I'm really excited to jump into everything that's to come. I mentioned this in the opening of the episode, but we've got a few people joining us to chat about what's happening in 2022 Release 2. But can you provide a little teaser of what to expect?
Yes, we've got some really great things teed up for our listeners. First up, we'll be covering Smart Count, which is a new mobile inventory count solution. It may sound familiar to a few people. We previewed it last year at SuiteWorld, so happy to see that it's now available. Another interesting product we'll be talking about is the new and improved rebate and trade promotion SuiteApp. It automates and simplifies this really complex process, not only from a management and execution side of these programs, but also from accounting side. So stay tuned for that. And then last, but certainly not least, is we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with the NetSuite Mobile App. It's a little different from our usual feature coverage stuff, but there's been a ton of great work going on that side of the house from both the iPhone and Android apps. So it's great to see that we'll be diving a little bit deeper into that.
Some really cool areas that I cannot wait to dive into. But before that, I think it's always important on these kinds of episodes to explain how releases work, for our new listeners and or customers who've never been through this before, or for those who just need a refresher on how all this works. So how are these new features being delivered to our customer base, Lisa?
Yeah, always good for a refresher reminder. I know, I can barely remember like what I had for breakfast the other day. So well, we release product updates twice a year. So all 31,000+ of our customers receive these updates. Everybody is on the same release using the latest and greatest version of NetSuite. This is our second update of the year. So hopefully for those folks who have been with us for the first release, that was a smooth, easygoing process. So this should be no different. But generally, the update is released in 3 phases. This time it'll be, we're releasing between August and October. Each customer is assigned to a release phase. So in your application, on your dashboard, you'll see a new release portlet pop up, which will provide the dates and the time of when the account is updated and when you can access the release preview environment. So on the day of your update, customers don't need to do anything or install anything. Accounts will go offline during this update time, which is usually scheduled for about a 2-hour period. But most of our updates, they tend to happen within 60 minutes or less. So pretty seamless and transparent to most of our users.
Well, I think a big part of that, like you said, hopefully if you went through our first release of 2022, it was smooth operations for you. But part of that is preparing for this. So how should customers best prepare for the update to make sure that it really does go seamlessly?
Yeah. Not that everybody has to, do things and prepare, but it's always good to be aware and conscious of what's happening and all the new stuff that's being released and available to take advantage of. So first thing is just, become familiar with what's in the release, a little brushing up, learning, just to become aware is always great. And the second thing, if you really wanted to, get into this and experience it, is to request a release preview account and give it a try. While the updates do happen automatically, it always is good to test out things, with your customizations or integrations and other workflows, just to, be on the safe side. I know I don't like surprises. So a little preparation in advance never hurts.
Yeah.
So you can, request a release preview account if you don't have that, which is done in NetSuite, on your NetSuite application under the Setup tab. Just go in and that's where you can request a preview account for this release.
Awesome. And what other ways can customers really learn about 2022 release 2? Like, where can they read more? Where can we send them after they listen to this in-depth episode?
Yeah, definitely. So along the becoming familiar with what's in the release, there's a bunch of ways you can do that besides listening to the podcast. Mm-hmm. From a reading perspective, well, we've got the sneak peek blogs that are on netsuite.com. So I think with this release, we've got about 7 of them, which do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the product features, the key product features. So that's a quick way to read about that. But then always, if you really want to, get the full details of stuff, there's always the release notes. So those are available to go find a nice shady tree and spend some time with some iced tea or other refreshing beverages and read up on that. There's a bunch of training videos that are always available on on Suite Answers. So take a look around there and see what type of videos are there for you to brush up on. And then there's a bunch of actually events happening. So I would encourage customers, if they're not aware of the customer meetup virtual events, those will be happening in early part of August. So if you haven't received an invitation to that yet, I would encourage you to either reach out to your account manager for that, or on the NetSuite website on the events section, there are also ways for you to register for that. And then, of course, the ultimate event is Suite World. So,
yes.
We have that coming up, which, a lot of these features and things that are in this release will be talked about even more, shown in demos, be in the demo grounds and have breakout sessions on. So, Suite World will be a great way to learn about these new things in Vegas, full suite ahead. Let's go to Vegas.
Let's do it. I love that. Yes. And I'll provide links to all of that content in the description of this episode. And also, if you haven't yet registered for Suite World, I will provide a registration link for you as well. And Lisa, just thank you so much for coming on and giving us this overview. I think it's time now to dive into all of those areas with some of our experts who are coming on to join us. So with that, I bid you farewell.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Kendall.
Next, we're diving into our all-new cycle count functionality with Smart Count. Joining us is Laura Maready, our Senior Principal Product Manager. Hi, Laura. As businesses who carry inventory look to improve their bottom line right now, we know it's important to maintain the correct levels of inventory to meet demand without having too much inventory on hand that's just sitting there and therefore incurring more expenses. To do this, periodic inventory counts are essential. So to start, can you explain the difference between doing a full count or cycle counting regularly and why we recommend those cycle counts?
Yeah, sure thing. So when you're doing a full count, that means that you're counting your entire location at once. There's a couple of really big challenges with that. The first one that you may not think of is it might not actually be frequent enough. If you're counting once a year, twice a year, if you're talking some products that move really quickly or that have a really high value, it might actually be more efficient for those items to count them more frequently. The other really big challenge when you're talking about a full count is that it often requires shutting down your entire business. I'm sure you've probably walked by a store or gotten an email from a company that you are a customer of that says, hey, we're not shipping out inventory this weekend because we're doing an inventory count.
Yeah.
And that's just a real challenge. It's a huge disruption. It's very costly. It can cost people customers because the customers have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
The other big challenge with a full count is that all of your inventory changes are going to hit all at once, which means it's a big hit on your expenses, and it might generate some really big orders. So if you're running on a replenishment system and you're running on reorder points, as an example, and you have a couple hundred items are suddenly under their reorder point, you could trigger a really big order all at once for half of the items in your company, and that might just be way too big. So cycle counts are going to get rid of a lot of those challenges. When you do a cycle count, you're counting specific items or specific categories at certain intervals. And what's great about that is that it's really flexible. So you can count more important items more frequently. So you can say that you want to count, your jewelry, your high-end watches, your iPhones, etc. Maybe you want to do those weekly or daily. But when you have items like screws, you may want to count those once a year because the value is very low. Their volume is lower too. Right. So it lets you be flexible that way. And it's less disruptive because there's fewer items to count every day. You're not going through and counting everything in a location in a single day or in a day or two. You're counting just a couple of items, and that lets you spread that out throughout the year.
Yeah.
And finally, like I was saying with those orders, you're not going to get those big giant orders for those products where you fell under your reorder point because of your cycle count. You're not going to get all of those orders at once. You're going to have a couple of items this week, a couple of items next week. It allows you to spread those expenses over the year, which is really going to be better for your bottom line.
Wow. It's funny you say that. I'll never forget. I was going on a trip, a couple years back, and I went to a major department store that I will not name, but they were doing a full count. And so they had shut the store down like 3 hours early. And it was like one of those like last minute things. I needed to get in and grab something, and they had shut the entire store down. And I was like, oh no, this is why you need to be cycle counting. But anyway, so I have a personal story there, but, okay. So I'm hearing all the benefits of cycle counts, and why, we definitely recommend them. But what are the difficulties that companies face in doing cycle counting, and why are they more difficult for some industries, such as like retail and high volume distributors?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the systems. Certain system limitations are going to make a cycle count difficult for certain types of companies. So one example is that in a lot of systems, you actually can't count while you're performing other transactions in that location, even on different items. So let's say you only wanted to count the socks at that department store, but keep open the department you were going to. In some systems, they wouldn't allow you to do that. They would actually require the entire location to be shut down. That's a real challenge and definitely not ideal. Another one is sometimes that setup can be really difficult, especially if you're talking retailers or high volume distributors, where you just have a large number of items. A lot of times you have to create what's called a cycle count plan, and you have to choose which items are going to be counted. You have to make sure that the list is accurate. Then you have a manual process to actually send that list of things to be counted to the warehouse. In some systems, there's not even an electronic way to send the list. You actually give them a paper list. And that, I'm sure you can imagine how complex that can get with a bunch of little paper slips of paper saying what to do. And finally, approvals can be really complex. Yeah, when you're talking huge numbers of items across many different locations, if you're having to look line by line across all of the counts that were done in order to approve them and find the things that were not okay, then you could be taking, hours or even days to take a look at those. And that's definitely not ideal for anybody.
No, especially right now, as we are all looking to create greater efficiency in our business to really improve bottom line. So, that I can see those challenges being an issue. So as I said in the introduction to this episode, as well as the introduction to you, Laura, we are releasing Smart Count in 2022 release 2. So tell us more about it. What is it and how does it relieve some of those pains that you just mentioned?
So excited to talk about this. I have been working on Smart Count for a while, and I'm really excited that I'm ready to share it out here with our customers. So Smart Count helps in a bunch of different ways. The first one is that scheduling that we were talking about. So it uses the built-in NetSuite item location configuration and the next count date and count interval that are already there in NetSuite. And what it's going to do is use those to automatically send to the people in your warehouse or in your store a list on their mobile device of items that need to be counted today. There's nothing that has to be done to set this up other than just creating the next count date. So you say this item needs to be counted every 7 days, and every 7 days, when the person in the store or the warehouse opens their mobile device, they'll see that those items should be counted. So it's super easy, automatic setup. The next thing is the interface. So the interface, you can really set it up so that your people are going to be scanning in the way that you want them to scan. So one example is you can force tally scans, which is where the person would have to literally scan every single item to increase the quantity. That's how we did it when I worked at the big department store that you may have been shopping at. And you could also allow quantity entry. And the great thing about that is that's actually selectable at an item level. So you can say that people have to count, let's say, refrigerators or full bicycles or computers or other high value items by scanning every item, but maybe your low value items, like again, your screws, your washers, nails, things that you're gonna have thousands of, they can just type in a quantity for.
Wow. And there's also some intelligence around scheduling a cycle count, right? How does that work, and what business processes might trigger a cycle count?
Yeah, so the really smart thing about Smart Count is that we're enabling you to create a count trigger or a count configuration based on any item safe search. So what that means is that you can set up your own business rules for when you would like to have a Smart Count trigger. So one example that we've seen a lot of people saying they want to do is if an item gets below its reorder point, they would like to have somebody validate that that item is actually below its reorder point before the order goes and triggers.
Got it. So is Smart Count dependent on any other NetSuite modules?
Yeah, it is. It requires advanced inventory management and SCM Mobile, which is our supply chain management mobile application.
And where is it available?
It's available everywhere in the world that NetSuite is available.
Well, we love to hear that. Laura, this is great. Very exciting stuff on Smart Count. I know we've chatted about it in the past, and so it's really awesome to see it coming to fruition in 2022 release 2. And I just appreciate you so much for coming on and chatting about it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to share this with everybody.
How did 6 out of the top 7 best performing tech stocks gain visibility and control over financials, inventory, planning, and budgeting with NetSuite by Oracle? Answers at netsuite.com/code. netsuite.com/code.
Next up, NetSuite's industry product manager for wholesale distribution, John Beck, dives into our new SuiteApp for rebates and trade promotions. Hi, John. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Well, first, we're going to ease into this just a little bit. What are rebates and trade promotions?
Sure, it's a good question, right? So rebates and trade promotions include a somewhat, wide set of use cases, but generally speaking, they're all geared towards driving revenue, volume, loyalty, profitability. Ultimately, they're pretty much always B2B in nature and taking place between supply chain participants, so manufacturers, distributors, and retailers. There's really multiple reasons why these agreements are used, right? They can be promotional in nature. That's probably the majority of scenarios that we see. But there are also other usages as well. Like there are scenarios where supply chain participants are looking to mitigate the impact of competition in a particular geographic area, for example. They can be used to shelter prices so that the actual price of a transaction is not actually what's on an invoice. That could be for competitive reasons, for example. And they can also be used in other scenarios where third parties are involved, for example, royalties calculations, spiffs, and other scenarios involving GPOs and buying groups. There's kind of a variety of scenarios where they're used, but I would say predominantly they're promotional in nature.
So, okay, so I'm hearing a lot of benefits here. I mean, how important would you say rebates and trade promotions are to manufacturers and distributors? Like, how important is that kind of, that loyalty, that providing that competitive edge?
Sure. I mean, really, where they apply, they're critical. And really, if they're not calculated and they're not claimed, then they're effectively lost. And that loss, really, in many cases, goes directly to the bottom line. So for distributors in particular, the impact of these is often equal to their income for the year. And in the past couple of decades, I've been in WD in particular, which is my particular area of focus. I've often heard that the impact of rebates and trade promotions is equivalent to the distributor's bottom line for the year. So a penny saved there is a penny earned for sure.
And so then what are some of the common challenges manufacturers and distributors face in managing and implementing promotions and rebates? Like, where do you see that kind of become a loss and impacting the bottom line?
Yeah, sure. So the biggest challenge that comes up with these is when they're transactional in nature, which is really the majority of the scenarios, by the way, right? So that really means when each of these are calculated on an individual sales order, or on a cash sale, or on an invoice. And in moderate to high volume environments, really, it's kind of impossible to manage manually. Imagine, right? We're entering an order or we're entering a sale in some way, and we need to calculate a rebate, and there could be multiple rebates on one sale transaction. So if you have multiple agreements, how do you manage all of those? And how do you manage which one you should choose if there are multiple in effect at transaction entry? And imagine that instead of having one user trying to manage that, imagine having tens, 20s, hundreds of users trying to manage that. So ultimately, really, it's impossible to manage without having some sort of systematic way of calculating these. And that's really, one of the huge values of having this, right?
Right.
Now, in addition to that, really just real quick, I mean, there's often negotiation that takes place at time of sale. And so where these are, these rebates are calculated, particularly where they're promotional in nature, and there's some sort of negotiation going on in parallel at the time of sale, how are we able to effectively negotiate if we don't know what our post rebate or net of rebate bottom line is? So it's really imperative really that there's some sort of systematic way of calculating these rebates and seeing the impact of the rebate on the bottom line, so that situations like these, we know exactly how far down we can go.
So what are we offering in 2022 release 2 to really help solve some of these challenges, like you said, really minimizing those manual tasks and helping calculate the impact on the bottom line and so forth?
Yeah, so the overall solution will be delivered over several releases, but this first release coming up here this fall will be the foundation of the solution. And with that, we'll include the ability to create, configure, and manage agreements. It'll include a calculation engine. It'll include multiple calculation methods. And this first release will be based on sales as opposed to sales and purchases. We'll deliver a purchase flow in a subsequent release. And so this first release will also include the ability to accrue, reverse accruals, and process claims and disbursements. So essentially, you can pay or get paid from any business partner, if you will, or any entity, if you will, that you're dealing with. So with that, sorry, just real quick, with that on
Yeah.
several subsequent releases, we'll continue to add functionality. Some of those things will be calculations on assembly items, volume incentives, and again, as I mentioned a minute ago, purchase transactions.
Okay, so and this is an all new rebates and trade promotion suite app, just to clarify.
It's a new suite app. Previously, we had a suite solution that we kind of leveraged to meet this need, which was more of a packaged professional services offering. But this is the first product solution that we're delivering. Yes.
Got it. Okay, good. Thanks. So how is having this capability enhanced by really being a part of the suite versus a separate, application or applications even?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, right, given the transactional nature of most of these use cases, there's really no alternative, unfortunately, to actually having an embedded native solution. Right.
Right.
Now, in certain scenarios, right, if you're just dealing with volume incentives, which are volume incentives, these are like the scenarios where you have, hey, if you buy $1 million from me at the end of the year, you'll get a percentage back or things like this, right? Those are things that can be done at the end of the year in a spreadsheet, not that big a deal. But where you have multiple promotions going on at time of an individual sale, you really need to have some sort of native embedded solution to be able to manage it properly. So yeah.
And what about from an accounting perspective? Like, how is this benefiting our customers?
Right, that's half of it as well, right?
Right.
You need the ability to calculate these rebates. When you calculate them, you need to be able to post an accrual at the time of invoicing, potentially recalculating those rebate amounts as at the time based on the actual fulfillments that might have occurred, and then reversing those accruals at the time a claim or disbursement is generated. So that is when these transactions begin to accumulate and the volumes increase, especially in high volume environments, that can be really challenging. So having a real-time solution that manages all that is, certainly a big part of it. Yeah.
Right. And that's all, connected seamlessly to be able to move
Absolutely.
that information back and forth between various teams. Well, thank you, John. This is exciting stuff. We really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about it.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And to wrap up our 2022 Release 2 episode, Malin Huffman and Tom Bartak will jump on to discuss the exciting updates around our NetSuite Mobile App. Hi, Malin and Tom. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Kendall. My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Hey, nice to meet you.
So to kick things off here, can you provide our listeners with an overview of the NetSuite Mobile App?
Very happy to. So we have a mobile app that's currently available for both iOS and Android devices. It's a free download. You can get it today. And it's really designed to give every NetSuite user some key visibility and access to the suite to manage your business anywhere you have your smartphone. So you're not restricted to just having your desktop, your laptop. Anywhere you got your phone, you can get work done. You've got things like dashboards, sales activity logging, expense reports, time tracking, approvals, customer and sales records, many other types of data in the suite, saved searches. So really it is NetSuite in your pocket. There's also features, as I mentioned, for basically any NetSuite user, executives, managers, sales, services, anyone. It also supports key customizations that you've made to your NetSuite account, custom fields, scripting. So all in all, it's a very powerful and flexible app, again, in your hand or in your pocket on your smartphone device.
Which we're all living on in
Exactly.
in this current age. So that is important. Tom, why is 2022 Release 2 particularly important from the mobile perspective? Like, why are we talking about it in this episode?
So that's a very good question. This time we reached a very important milestone of making both the Android as well as the iOS app functionally the same. Historically, these two versions were split. One was playing catch up with the other and vice versa, and that is no longer the case. So we are no longer confusing our users with what is available in which app, because now it's the same. And that's important not only from the end user perspective, that's important also for account administrators who can simplify their setup and onboarding. So that's why it's important.
And does this potentially affect the way we release or even approach new features?
It definitely does. And Tom kind of hit on some of these points. Without getting too deep into how the sausage gets made, it's going to accelerate our mobile development to work this way. From an internal perspective, we've been kind of alternating between the two as a way to experiment, try things out, and then, as Tom said, play catch up on the other platform. And after a number of years of working this way with our mobile apps, we think it's going to get much better results by unifying the feature set, unifying the design as much as we can across them, and then tackling improvements to both apps at once going forward.
Well, and I can kind of see this at a high level, and you even kind of touched on it, but can you just really get specific here? Why is this so beneficial to our customers?
Right. I was talking about the internal benefits, but it is definitely of benefit to customers as well. And Tom mentioned admins being able to kind of manage their user base more easily. And customers will all be able to use those same features at the same time. It'll be easier for them to learn if they pick up an iOS device and use our app, and then go over to an Android or trying to help another user. They'll see a very similar experience and the same functionality. So that's important. I think it's also easier for us to promote and message that to everyone at once, and they don't get frustrated seeing, oh, I can do this thing on an iOS app, but I can't do it over here on the Android version because it hasn't caught up yet. So it's just great for both us and our customers.
Amazing. And Tom, what are some of the new features in the mobile app this time around?
So the recent iOS release actually brought an overhauled records experience. So we worked really hard to, streamline your access to your data. So the record list, which is the central point of, you getting to your data, has now its own icon, its own place in the tab bar. So you can go there straight up right away from the home screen. And this way you can go straight to your customers, sales orders, invoices, expenses, and so on. We also focused on improving the user experience and the explorability. So we redesigned global search. It's no longer packed with the recent records. Recent records have been moved away from the global search to the record list. So we have now two tabs, one for your records and one for those you accessed recently. Again, this was made to streamline the access, and the global search has also received some improvements in terms of narrowing the scope. So if, for instance, you open the global search from a customer's list and start to search, it will automatically filter the results just for customers. So those are the main new features we released this time.
And are they available right now, or when will they become available?
That's a good question. They are. This is out. This has been out for like 2-3 weeks already. And customers can get to it by going to App Store or Play Store. And the existing users have hopefully already upgraded.
Amazing. And that was a leading question because I know it's available, because we have a demo about it available on our YouTube platform. And I will include a link to that demo in the description of this episode. But for now, Malin, what kind of future features can customers expect from the mobile app?
Yeah, the development approach that we talked about earlier with working on both operating systems at the same time is going to help us release improvements more quickly. Mobile users are used to frequent updates and improvements, and sometimes I think it just reminds them when they see there's an update, to log into the apps on their phone and kind of check out what's new, and that drives adoption. So I think it's really a good opportunity for us to continue adding and quickly adding more features and more improvements to the apps. And mobile is also a great place for us to experiment and innovate with the user experience of NetSuite. So as I mentioned earlier, what we've got today is a really robust feature set. There's something for almost every NetSuite user there. So what we really want to focus on now is refining those experiences, not increasing the feature footprint so much, but really making those experiences as fast and easy as possible for the kind of quick, high repetition tasks that people want to do every day and get in and out. So things like logging expenses, we've already done a lot of work there. Salespeople capturing conversations that they're having with prospects and customers, that sort of thing that's really rapid and happens over and over again. I think it's a losing battle to try and optimize every task end to end in the mobile form factor. And that's really not what most users want. So that's where we're going to focus on the experience.
And what about single purpose apps? Any plans there?
Well, single purpose apps, your phone has a lot of apps that will just do one or two tasks really, really well, right? It's kind of a key principle from the early days of mobile. But with something like NetSuite, it's almost more like an operating system in itself, right? It has hundreds of different tasks and business processes spanning your whole business. And we have this notion that we call suiteness, where everything works together. It only makes sense when you have access to the whole suite. So it doesn't make sense, we think, to really implement NetSuite on the smartphone as a collection of these mini apps. But what we can do is optimize the information, the way it's organized, the challenge of navigation. How do you get to the thing that you want to do right now today? And that's something that we're going to focus on within the existing apps, tailoring it for each role and user, tailoring the interface to get really, really quickly to the thing that you probably want to do today, and give users the ability to tailor it themselves, customize that interface so that the things that they use every day are front and center and really, really fast to get to.
Anything else either of you would like to share before we wrap up here?
So as we already discussed, we work hard on adopting a slightly faster release cycle, and chances are that before our customers get upgraded to their 20.2 release, we will have at least one version of the app out. And the one that is currently scheduled for second half of July is also quite important from the feedback perspective, because that's one of the things we're looking for, and that's getting feedback from our customers. We have, the comment section in Suite Answers. We have the same in both app stores, but that's really difficult to, catch up with. So this time we'll deliver an in-app feedback functionality so that the users can share anything they would like to share with us directly from the app.
Well, thank you both so much for the insight. Some awesome stuff here with the mobile app, and appreciate you taking the time to share. And I'm sure there will be more to come in the future. Thank you both.
Thank you, Kendall.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it. It's like Christmas in July. Lots of awesome new functionality coming your way. And like I said, if you want to learn more or dive into any of the areas we covered today, I've left a few links in the description of this episode. Thank you so much to all of our guests for joining us today, and most especially, thank you, all of our listeners, for tuning in. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe for more episodes just like this. Bye.
You just listened to the NetSuite podcast. Be sure to tune in every week with more NetSuite developments, stories, and insights into the benefits of one integrated system to help you run your business.